Are you ready, kids?
Hello, it's Employee a Million, and welcome back to SpongeComs. Today I'm looking at Season 1, Episode 12, The Chaperone and Employee of the Month, both of which aired on October 2nd, 1999. But before I get into these episodes, my question of the week for you this week is, what's your favorite Pearl episode? There are more options than you think, because they do dip into Pearl occasionally, not as much as other characters, but when they do, it's more memorable because of that. I don't know how that works, but she was a favorite character of Steven Hillenburg, so let's kick into her first full episode. The Chaperone was written by Sherm Cohen, Aaron Springer, and Peter Burns, and it probably has the ugliest title card of the pre-movie era. But anyway, those writers, I said before in Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost that they work better with more far out there plot lines, and this is a school dance episode, which isn't quite right for SpongeBob, so it does have some potential, but it is a very bland school dance episode, even if you put it in another show like The Proud Family or something, or As Told by Ginger. But it does have this. It has an absolute swarm of threads at the start. I don't know if it was an animation error on any behalf, but it just makes it a lot funnier. I don't know why, just all these Fred clones hanging around the Krusty Krab. That's a plot line for itself, if I'm being honest. And this episode does have a few animation quirks like that, where you can tell that maybe the storyboard artists were just having fun with themselves and throwing shade at themselves, especially with the dummy joke, because that is something that a storyboard artist would do. Because if you have SpongeBob stay in place for too long like that, it does look very boring and undynamic, and I'm happy they were able to make it into a joke, because otherwise this would just be really bad, lazy storyboarding. I don't know if this episode was made on the fly or anything, if it had a shorter production cycle, because it does kind of feel like it sometimes, with just how strange it feels compared to the rest of season 1, even early season 1 where they were trying all these different things. And all the threads have left. But yeah, Pearl was one of Steven Hillenburg's favorite characters. I don't know if she was his absolute favorite character, but it was the sort of character they wouldn't have been able to write consistently on Rocco, so she is a very SpongeBob-ish character in a lot of ways, and I think that he wanted to take advantage of that, give her some limelight episodes, some highlights, and it was filled with mixed results at the start, because you had this, and then Bossy Boots, which was just okay, Whale of a Birthday, which was also a bit iffy at points, but then they surprisingly started to hit it out of the park much later on into the show. I don't know why. I guess as SpongeBob fans grew into teenagers, maybe it was just more relatable, but yeah, the general prom and high school setup is rarely explored in SpongeBob. Like, I don't think we ever visit Pearl's high school often. Like, it might have been in the background of Whale of a Birthday. I haven't seen that episode in a while. But yeah, this is a very unique episode in that regard, and it isn't everyone's cup of tea. It is my third least favorite season 1 episode. But I won't deny that it has its own appeal. There are some people who like this episode, and hey, more power to you. If you do answer this episode, then I can totally see that. Because Pearl is generally likable in this, and SpongeBob's design in it is pretty original. And you can sort of tell there that the sound effect was playing, but he was right at the door. The jiggly sound effects of his long legs. The long legs are something that doesn't sit right with me. It just looks a little weird on him. Like, I know SpongeBob is a generally weird character, but oh my goodness, he looks like an alien in those. But yeah, about Pearl as a character, She is pretty relatable in this, even if you're not a teenage girl, like 90% of humanity. But I think that SpongeBob's characterization here it is very strange because this isn't his forte as far as locations go. So I'm sure the writers were thinking, okay, how would SpongeBob have been in high school? He would have been a complete and utter dork, because this was sort of the mindset for Steven Hillenburg when he was writing SpongeBob. He is a dork, he is a square, so how about we exaggerate that in a high school setting? And SpongeBob does come off as a little bit too much of a dork to sympathize with or relate to. He does kind of ruin it, but Pearl's alright with it. It's not the most relatable plot out there, but yeah, it does have some gags. They're very hit or miss gags, but they're gags. Like with the whole photo things, they already took a photo, so why do they need another photo? And we also get the first appearance of a group of friends for Pearl outside of Squeaky Boots. And they're all dating anchovies. That's a question that this episode raises. Are anchovies just teenage boys in the SpongeBob universe? Because that seems to be it. Like, is Help Wanted a commentary on teenage boys' addiction to fast food or something? I don't know. Like, anchovies are whatever you want them to be. I don't know. I think that was another one of those things that was just sort of dropped. I think they were meant to be another sort of versatile animal like jellyfish or clams, but they just didn't catch on because they can only say one word: meat. But the fruit punch bowl is pretty good at first until SpongeBob starts squirting it out of his nose. Like, it's fine. It's not bad or anything. And and now we see Pearl's initial date to the prom, which was just another anchovy. Like, is there a joke in here about what girls see in anchovies, or sort of like nerdy boys? It's hard to say because the anchovies have virtually no personality. And now we get to the dance portion of the thing. This is the thing that the episode really likes to focus on in its second half: SpongeBob dancing and making even more of a fool of himself, and also poking fun at like teenage dancing trends, like the wave or something. I don't know. In an era of Fortnite dances, these seem like pretty normal. But the sponge is anything but normal. And the prom is going to Davy Jones' locker. As is the point of this episode, because Pearl just kind of doesn't like SpongeBob for ruining it. Then later on, she does like SpongeBob for ruining it. And I guess it is because of like the mood that the episode wants to go in at the end. They want to make it sweet, and I don't mind that. They do want to make it a little less bitter, but it does so at the cost of being sensical. Oh, and SpongeBob does go into the girls' bathroom, because why not? He just needs to be more of an embarrassment. However, I do like this. I think that this is the best part of the episode, SpongeBob's high-pitched blubbering. It does really show how sad he is without really making him obnoxious. Like, it is silly sad, which SpongeBob does a lot, especially these days, especially in like the late 2000s era. But yeah, it can be pretty funny when it's done sparingly, like it was in season 1. And here we have the sponge, the dance move that, I don't know if SpongeBob invented, or I don't know. Maybe sponges are sort of like a repressed minority, because this dance just causes a lot of mayhem. And as the sponge goes on, the prom goes even more downhill with a lot more violence and destruction, and That's sort of funny to see to some people, but I guess there's sort of a reason that the sponge hasn't caught on. A, it's impossible to do, and B, it doesn't make for the best ending to an episode. I mean, the song itself is pretty good. It's got like this. It is a bit of a rock thing, rock pop. I don't know. I do like this sort of music, but it is hard for me to identify all 700 genres of music there are. It is catchy. I do like some of the choreography, like SpongeBob turning into a basketball. Oh, and visitors, I do like that because SpongeBob is a visitor to this. And then there's the ending itself, like the very, very end where this SpongeBob is revealed to be the dummy all along. And I think that the joke makes a lot less sense here at the very end, because the joke before was that SpongeBob was not doing anything, so the storyboarders were like, okay, let's poke fun at how we weren't really doing anything with him. But here, it's sort of like, hey, here's a joke that we really liked at the start of the episode. Why don't we just do it again? I do also kind of like the Precious Flower joke, but this little extra dummy joke does get the episode off to a middling end. And I think that's the best way to describe this episode. It is pretty middling. There's some good stuff, there's some pretty weak stuff, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of eh. Would I watch it again? Sure, but I wouldn't get much out of it. That's how I feel about The Chaperone. Employee of the Month was written by Paul Tibbett and Mr. Lawrence, not to be confused with the 2002 PC game or the 2006 song on the Best Day Ever album. And this episode, oh my gosh, is it interesting and funny and just enjoyable to watch from start to near the end. But I think we should start from the top. The first joke of the episode, Annoy Squidward Day. I love that this is a recurring thing on social media. Every February 15th, we have to point out that it's Annoy Squidward Day. And I try to watch the most agonizing Squidward episodes on that day, even if I don't like them. And it's great that SpongeBob fans can have that day to themselves, that pseudo-national holiday, and that even non-fans do like the joke. And in general, this episode is chock full of jokes like that are absurd, but are still character-driven. And those are the best SpongeBob jokes, honestly, because this is a very insane show, and but it's also a genuinely likable show with good, unique, interesting characters. And this sort of episode is good in that it does show a disparity between characters and taps into that to give an excellent conflict. SpongeBob and Squidward duking it out for the Employee of the Month award and having different attitudes towards it. SpongeBob is absolutely dedicated to keeping up his record of always being Employee of the Month, which I think that any kid can relate to, especially any successful kid. Because, of course, cartoons do generally appeal to less... I don't know the right way to say this, but kids that are kind of struggling and need to be happy. But even successful kids do sort of have these issues in that they don't really know when success gets to their head, and they have to cool down from that. They have to find a way to understand that they can't be perfect forever, and they will have to give up their awards or something to other kids. Oh, and this bologna egg is absolutely great. I would have changed the fart noise, but otherwise it is excellent. But anyway, about with the success stuff, that is incredibly relatable to even kids who struggle a lot, because SpongeBob is just a diverse, relatable character. And it is really funny seeing him try to keep his Employee of the Month award going, even though it does look like it's going to be taken by Squidward. And here we get to the army portion of the episode that every episode about Employees of the Month needs. And I do like that the main Army SpongeBob for the most part, it does briefly say January there. It says March for most of it because of an army march or something. I think they might have had a joke of him saying March, March, but it would have been too predictable or too obvious. But yeah, I do kind of like that sequence. It is a more spontaneous, random fantasy than you're used to on this show, but it is equally fun. But anyway, Squidward's motivation for getting Employee of the Month, not much of a motivation for the most part, but eventually it just kind of grows into an animosity towards SpongeBob and his undying lust for it. And he just tries to show SpongeBob that it isn't a big deal, I can get it. And then it just goes to his head. Like, that is really funny. I do really like that angle of it. Oh, and this little snooping around Squidward's house is pretty good. Like, there is real tension in this scene. Like, it isn't just a complete joke. There is a conflict within this scene of SpongeBob trying not to be noticed by Squidward. But eventually he is when Squidward is sleeping and he sees a hand coming out of his pillow. Like, oh my gosh, that would be the scariest thing ever. But yeah, there's another great gag in this scene, the clock gag of SpongeBob constantly breaking Squidward's clocks, and for some reason Squidward has a ton of clocks. Like, by this point, the episode is kind of devolving into Looney Tunes, but it has earned that de-evolution because this episode has kind of earned your trust in these characters. Like, you can understand SpongeBob wanting to keep his record, and you can understand Squidward wanting to drop a dime on SpongeBob and show him that it's not that important, seriously. And in general, they are excellent comic foils, and I mean, that's what the best Looney Tunes shorts were about, excellent comic foils. And how much cartoon violence or cartoony shenanigans can come out of those foils, and just how big and spontaneous they can be. Like, I'm not even the biggest Looney Tunes guy, but I do kind of understand that sort of underlying comedy. And this episode is very inspired by that. Like Jellyfish Jam is sort of inspired by Disney Tunes. I'd say this episode is sort of inspired, especially as it goes on, by Looney Tunes. Did I say Jellyfish Jam was inspired by Disney cartoons? Because I think I said that when I first talked about Jellyfish Jam. Okay. But anyways, this little sleep thing, it is a sort of stopgap, but I think that some tension needed to drop so that the chase scene near the end of the episode could have some more, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my gosh, this is the trouble with doing commentaries off the cuff. Some more impact. Okay, sorry, I saved it for the grave thing. This is the second episode in a row where SpongeBob has dug a grave for Squidward. What's going on? But yeah, they do try to sabotage each other, and that's great. Like, it just gradually builds and builds the impact of the jokes. Like, SpongeBob digs a grave for Squidward. Squidward tries to lock up SpongeBob's house, and then there's these all sorts of things, and it's really good comedic building up. It's building up to the big day where they can finally go into work and get that Employee of the Month award. And it is a chase scene, in a way. Sometimes they're walking, sometimes they're running. But they do start running more and more. And could you believe that the animation director for this episode was Sean Dempsey? Like, he loves some chase sequences. Like, he also did Nature Pants, Texas, Big Pink Loser, Life of Crime, and Sandy, SpongeBob, and the Worm. Like, he really loves going to town and giving these characters fun running around gags, and really going going all out with the jokes in them. And I do love this little early sunrise sequence and the boats and the anchors. Like, I don't know how that happened, but apparently that must have been one heck of a night. And I think that if the episode ended here and had a more normal ending, I would like it a lot more, but this ending has always frustrated me a little bit. Like, it's not one of my favorite endings to an episode. It doesn't outright destroy the episode. I do still like the first third and love the second third. But yeah, I think that a more normal ending could have been great. And this, it isn't too bad, but it's just sort of a non-ending in a way. I do really like these gross close-ups of them, though, and just how they're smiling, but they look absolutely tired and have seething hatred for each other underneath that. And there are some other things that I do kind of like about this ending, like the fact that the music gradually speeds up. Like, it is kind of unnerving in some ways, but it does sort of add to the sequence by pretty much just showing how eager they are and how it's kind of driving them insane. And I think that, in general, this ending would be a bit more earned if it were more about Mr. Krabs forcing SpongeBob and Squidward to be good employees and forcing the Employee of the Month award onto them, because Mr. Krabs is just an observer in this episode, and I don't think he deserves to have his whole restaurant, like, destroyed because his two employees, his only two employees, were acting up and had a rough night. Like, it's silly, I'll give this ending that, but it's a little too silly for me. Like, how is Squidward such a good Krabby Patty flipper already after Pickles and before Hooky? Like, his Krabby Patty skills are on par with SpongeBob here for some reason. But I do really like that sequence of the Krabby Patty getting filled with patties and blowing up and hundreds of patties strewn across the street for bypassers to pick up. I do think that is decently animated, but then I'm reminded again why this ending could have been a bit better. Don't quote me on this, but I think Mr. Krabs won it. And that is the Chaperone and Employee of the Month. Two episodes that are very different in structure and tone. The Chaperone was pretty low-key, while Employee of the Month was very energetic. And both have some pretty good and not so good things to talk about with them, but I know for a fact that The Chaperone has a more mixed reception, and Employee of the Month is considered one of the best season 1 episodes in terms of comedy. And I agree with that. It is a very funny episode. That just leaves my question of the week this week. What is your favorite Pearl episode? Like I said at the start, there are a lot of good answers that you could pick, and let me know in the comments, and I might mention them in the next video, which won't be for a while, but it'll be all the more worth it when I get to it, because it is going to be a very fun episode to talk about. Two very fun episodes to talk about, not for the same reasons, but still. Goodbye for now.